Former Tory Home Secretary Suella Braverman has today made her debut on LBC. She's been standing in as a guest host for James O'Brien. And it's a good thing that the law and order loving politician is such a fan of punishment, because she came in for plenty of it.
Anybody born under the age of 40 today is pretty much guaranteed not to vote for you. They're a generation that grew up under 14 years of Conservative rule, where you've basically made every single service, everything in this country worse.
I would consider coming back to the Tory party. I absolutely would, and I would consider becoming a member again. But I certainly wouldn't consider becoming a member again if I'm afraid yourself was the leader of the party. It's just a straight no.
You should be hanging your head in shame. Sorry, you have the Tory party have exacerbated this problem for political gain. Let's not mealy mouth. We know what politicians are like. It is a problem, I agree. It is a significant problem. But you have used this, and there has not been one word of apology come out of your mouth this morning. £700 million has been, let me quote a past colleague, sparked up against a wall to try and deal with this issue.
When he says 700 million, she goes, oh gosh, that does sound like rather a lot, doesn't it? Oh, God, now you say it. She's meant to be a populist. Stand up for yourself, Suella. I mean, I don't agree with you, but stand up for yourself. You're on radio. That's what you're there for. The last of those angry callers was talking specifically about the Tories' cruel, expensive, and ultimately pointless Rwanda scheme. It was formally scrapped yesterday by Yvette Cooper, the new Home Secretary, who also revealed it would cost a whopping £700 million, as you just heard a moment ago. Only 4 people were ever sent to Rwanda. All of them went voluntarily. Imagine being one of them. Cooper also revealed that the Tories had intended to spend a total of £10 billion on the scheme. Now, there was one very interesting moment in Braverman's discussions of the Rwanda scheme. Here she is making a peculiar admission to that angry caller.
If you look at the people coming on the boats, the countries that they're coming from are sometimes countries which are not safe. We get a lot of people from Afghanistan coming on the boats. We get people from Iran and Iraq and Syria coming on the boats. So what's your suggestion for a safe route with a country like Afghanistan? Return people back to Afghanistan? Return people back to the Taliban? Are you seriously suggesting that?
No, I'm certainly not. You have safe routes where people can apply for the right reasons and have adult conversations about returning people, etc. We left people
returning them to where? Where are you returning these people through your adult conversations, James?
Back to where their country is, if it's
right. So Afghanistan. So as I said, a large number come from Afghanistan. A large number. The reality. This is what I mean. This is what I mean with this subject. A lot of people have well-intentioned ideas, and they think it's easy. But the reality is so much more complex. So we can't return people back to Afghanistan because it's not a safe country. We can't return people back to Syria because it's not a safe country. So where would those people go, James, in your world?
If they meet the asylum criteria, they stay here, they work here, they pay their taxes, they work in the NHS, they work in the care system. We need these people.
Well, do we?
We can't have safe routes because people will have to go back to Afghanistan. And by the way, you can have a safe route and you could have places of return in Pakistan, potentially. You could pay the Pakistani government to have refugee camps there. I'm not suggesting that's my view on it. You could. You totally could. That's not an argument against safe routes from Afghanistan. What you're seeing there is Braverman completely turning the idea of asylum on its head. We can't let these people come from unsafe countries into this country because we can't return them to the unsafe countries that they're coming from. We can't have safe routes because then people from unsafe countries would come here. Yeah, I know you think you've got sound opinions on this, but actually you haven't thought about it. That caller was as confused as I am, frankly, until I realised that Braverman doesn't want Britain to take any refugees at all. Her issue isn't economic migrants or people smuggling gangs. It's the very idea of poor, terrified and desperate asylum seekers with legitimate claims arriving on the shores of the UK. Full stop. Even if they're coming from countries like Afghanistan, which we bombed and occupied. Jonas, what did you make of her appearance? It was rather, in a way, commendable that she would face the music for 3 hours But at the same time, I'm curious as to what she thought it would achieve.
It's fantastic that she faced the music. As long as Tories continue to embarrass themselves online during this period of opposition, I tend to be quite happy. But there are a set of serious points here to make. I mean, it just goes to show, despite all of the humdrum about fiscal responsibilities, about treating the country's economy like you would treat a household budget, there's always enough money to criminalize, warehouse, and exile people you decide you want to racially other. And Suella Braverman is a big fan of that. And there's another point to make here, that the Rwanda policy broadly is a symptom, not just of a cruel state of affairs governed by some of the most racist politicians in parliament, people like Suella Braverman. But that much is clear. But ever since Brexit, there has been a crisis in British statecraft. The question of how those that run the country create new systems of statecraft in those areas that were once managed by the European Union has been met lacking. They're increasingly reliant on the private sector, led by politicians whose interests don't exceed the short-termism of rentiers and finance capital. The British state has lost an incredible amount of technical expertise over the course of the period we tend to describe as neoliberalism. Instead, you have the Rwanda scheme, which, besides being an unspeakably repressive expansion of state powers against some of the most vulnerable and vilified people in the world, was also an experiment that we had come to expect from someone like Boris Johnson, showing all of the traits of his previous vanity projects, yet this one centrally geared towards ruining lives. And it's also worth saying that this scheme didn't emerge from Johnson's head. It's drawn from the playbook of the EU's own Fortress Europe. Like the EU's neo-colonial deals with states such as Libya, the British government loaned out its border system to another state. Like the EU's violation of international maritime law, the British government routinely talked about defying international and Europe-wide laws. So whilst the British government could no longer rely on the same division of labour as it could whilst it was a member of the EU, it could certainly apply the vast amount of practical lessons that the EU has provided in policing Europe's borders and murderously refusing entry to the world's most vulnerable. And I'll add this, the same question beckons for this new Labour government. We've got to remember that it was Tony Blair's Labour that created a litany of PFI-funded detention centres, who imposed voucher schemes on refugees, operated a system of forced dispersal. It's this tradition that Yvette Cooper proudly lauds when she briefs to the Sun that her Home Office will raid barbershops and car washes in pursuit of failed asylum seekers. So neither this nor history fill me with confidence that we can expect anything approaching a progressive migration policy from this new government.
I have to say that the 10 billion figure, mind-boggling. That's what Crossrail cost, 10 billion. Let's just give it to Paul Kagame, by the way. Paul Kagame, he's the big man down in Rwanda, democratically elected, not really. He is raking it in, you know? He should be making Instagram posts about how to make money. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Lastly, on policies related to Braverman, there's another bit of good news for those who might seek asylum here in the UK. The new government, has confirmed that the Bibi Stockholm asylum barge in Portland will close in January after costing the country millions. I don't know if people watching or listening have been to Portland and Dorset, West Dorset. There are already 2 prisons there. Okay, they don't need more prisons. It needs money, it needs investment. How about you give the people living there something? Make a change.